Skills requires to deal with people in our work assignments. This is the topic for the presentation today. We will talk about the various strategies how to deal with people. What are the communication methodologies? How do we behave? And how do we deal with even people with negative orientations, people who do not like to be associated with us? Come, let us understand in details how to deal with people during our work assignments. The interactive two-way process, remember, of any particular relationships or communication is nothing but communication. And as is the case in communication, there is a sender and a receiver. In between, there is what do we go is to emote the ideas and transmit those to from one person to another person through a channel which we can obviously choose, as in whatever you want to go around it. It can be an electronic channel, it can be in person, it can be via another gentleman or a lady, or the channel that you go around it, because this is the modalities wherein you basically encodes the messages and decodes the receiver decodes the meaning. So basically, this is what we go around it. But every time we choose a channel, there is something called noise that creeps in. There are semantic problems. There are issues with feedbacks. There are channels which might not be appropriate in the first place. The physical distraction, the status effect, and the cultural differences. Let me tell it to you. In case if I am trying to put a message between me and you via another person, now basically what is happening is I might like to say something to you, but when I put it to another person, the person might interpret it completely different because of the contextualization, because he or she does not feel the inner meaning of the message altogether, and because of his or her context might perceive a different meaning and will convey a different message to you. Basically, the original message never is not being received by you at the end of the day. Why? Because of the intermediary person who might have added or subtracted few points out of the main message. So that is one of the noise that comes around it. Similarly, there are many channels as many other noise that can creeps around it. So this is what we need to understand. It is communication is an interactive two-way process. Remember that two-way process is very important. And people might ask me, why two-way? This is one way, the message which goes from sender to receiver, and then the receiver acknowledges the message in form of a feedback. So that's the two-way process that comes around it. Remember, the communication process is only effective, is only efficient when the absolute message and the meaning is transmitted and received thereby. So effective communication occurs when the intended meaning of the sender is identical to the interpreted meaning of the receiver. Did I say the absolute message, absolute detail, absolute core of the message remain perfectly intact? Whereas efficient communication occurs at the basics of all cost, at the very instant that it is required to be received in. So absolutely, then we call it an efficient communication. Efficient communication means the lowest possible cost and the most instantaneous message or receiving being communicated. So potential trade-off between effectiveness and efficiencies must be recognized. So, persuasions and credibility in communication. Communication is used for sharing information. What did I say? Transmitting of ideas and influencing other people. Persuasion is getting someone else to support the message being presented. Definitely, if somebody is to be wooed upon, somebody has to be carried off, somebody has to be manipulated so that he or she becomes akin to the original idea that you want to send. That is what persuasion is all about. It horizontal structures and empowerment are important in context of persuasion. Obviously, we are trying to build rapport. Obviously, we are trying to build support. Obviously, we are trying to have cooperation between people then and there. And that is what is been meant by communication process altogether. It is the sharing of information. It is building persuasion or rapport. It is all about empowerment and contextualization of the persuasion. So, persuasion and credibility in communication, expert power and referent power are essential for persuasion. Now, when people talk from a position of power, a position of superiority, people are bound to get noticed. The communication is bound to get probably implemented with, even if with an art of doubt, people will question a little less. And that is what an expert power or referent power is all about. So people at the higher position in an organization are often respected or often adhered to because of their understanding of the fact that they are perceived superior. Credibility involves trust, involves respect, integrity in the eyes of others. Now, how do we build those referent power or expert power? It is that every time that you enact an action, take a decision, and if it turns out benevolent for every one of them, probably respect slowly and steadily creeps in the eyes of the people. And that is what credibility is all about. It credibility can be built through expertise and relationships. It is built through transparency and trust. So that is the power of communication process and persuasion and credibility in our workplace. We need to build this thing. We need to fundamentally reinforce trust. We need to fundamentally reinforce credibility time and again. So let us understand now the what are the various noises, interference, disturbances that can come in during the communication process. Number one will be the poor choice of channel. Yes, definitely yes. Probably writing a message, a short messaging services is a poor choice of channel. People will say why that's one of the best methodology. It's moreover it's a written format. Yes, but then I would counter it. Short messaging services is a one-way communication. It does not mean that I might have seen your message. One, two, even if I have seen your message, it does not mean that I'm going to reply to it back. So until and unless our communication is two-way oriented, the cycle is not complete. The communication does not take place in absolute terms. So that is what poor choice of channels is all about. It poor written and oral expression definitely depends upon the vocabulary part of the person, wherein he or she will see the dearth or see the wisdom in the vocabulary. If you have the strong vocabulary or a weak vocabulary, as the case might be, failure to recognize non-verbal signals, physical distraction, and status effect. That is what is been meant out here. Remember, status effect is the background, is the culture, is the ethos, is the principles that we believe in, and based on a principle we start viewing the world or the activities in a different lens. And that is what we need to understand. Physical distraction, on the other hand, you might be communicating to a person on a different paradigm. Let's say you're speaking to the person on a mobile, but the other person might be in a serene environment, one, or in a very noisy environment, in the sense that there might be traffic or there might be loud machine or loud music going around. The temperament changes when you are in a serene environment or in a disturbing environment. So probably then the understanding of the message would also differ in a way that might not be intended for. So this is what the noises is all about. It we need to understand those noises. Let us understand the poor choice of channel. Choose the channel that works best. Yes, definitely. When you don't want to respond, don't want to get a response, probably short messaging service is the right thing. But when you want to get an affirmation, please talk to the person, and it is better if you talk in person, so you can very well understand the factual things that has been communicated. Written channels work the best for the message that are simple and easy to convey, require extensive disseminations, and that too very quickly. You can validate your points, your arguments, and that too without any hindrance or interruption. Convey the formal policies or authoritative directives. Spoken channel work best for the messages that are complex or difficult to convey, where immediate feedback is needed. Attempt to create a supportive, even inspirational climate that comes around there. Yes, it is true. What is we are talking around it, having a supportive and an inspirational climate thereby. Communication process, guidelines of making oral presentation is being prepared, setting the right tones, sequencing the points thereby, supporting your points every now and then, ascend the presentation, add the right amount of polish, check your technology, never bet on the internet, and always be thorough, always be professional to make an oral presentation. Have it, practice it, definitely go about it with oral presentation, with facts and figures. This is what I keep on saying time and again. It is up to you. It is the impression that you create rather than the content that you present counts, matters a lot. So, failure to recognize non-verbal signals, one of the major fallacies of communications. Non-verbal communication take place through gestures, through facial expression, through body postures, through eye contact, and probably the usage of interpersonal space. Many people would not like people to intervene in their personal space, even though in an official decorum, probably their workstation, probably their office, they would like certain things to be maintained, certain decorums to be followed. So mixed message occurs when a people's word and non-verbal signals communicate completely different paradigm. The growing use of communication technology causes important non-verbal communications to be lost time and again. This is what I keep on saying, is the failure to understand the body language, failure to understand the non-verbal attributes of communication, which is of late becoming very prominent, to understand the emotional quotient or the emotional distortion that the person might be undergoing at any point of time during the communication. So let us understand the physical distraction. Yes, this is one of the noises that I've already told it to you. It includes interruptions, maybe perhaps telephone calls, perhaps a visitors, perhaps a lack of privacy. That is what we want to go around it. Can interfere with effectiveness of a communication attempt, can be avoided or at least minimized through proper planning, as the case might be. So we need to understand what is a communication process thereby. Status effect occur when an organization hierarchy of authority creates a barrier to effective communication. It tells the organizations how people at hierarchical in the organization or people at the lower position behave, react, and think thereby. Status includes filtering the intentional distortion of information to make it appears favorable to the recipient. Subordinate acting as in yes man, always buttering the superior persons in the organization, and this is what becomes mostly status effect. You may not agree, but you fail to disagree and decide to disagree. You may not disagree, but you are accustomed to being agreeing it. It's the way that people have been built on, as in a rebel or as in a yes man of a subordinate that comes around with the status effect. So how do we improve it? We have spoken everything that needs to be done in the workplace as to deal with people. Now, can we improvise upon it? This is where the point needs to be taken care for. The process is to take action to help someone say exactly what he or she means around it, is what active listening is all about it. Let me point it out, certain rules for active listening. Number one, look for the message content. Number two, see, feel the uh, content altogether and respond to those feelings towards it. Remember, it is not what has been said as in content matters concern. It is the body language that has been exhibited. Look for all sort of cues, paraphrase and probably restate to get a confirmation of what you have actually understood or what was actually being conveyed to you is the rules for active listening. So 10 steps. Let us understand 10 steps for good listening. First and foremost thing, never interrupt and stop talking. Put the other person in ease. Show them that you want to listen. Encourage them to speak. Remove any and every potential distraction. One of the best distraction in the modern life is your interference from your mobile, is the fact that at time you start doing fubbing, and this is what needs to be done. Fubbing is like a new English word called phone and snubbing. When you mix them thing, when you basically always take an excuse to look at the screen of your mobile, no matter what it is all about, it is called fubbing and is a potential distraction. Empathize with the other person. Do not respond too quickly. Be patient. Let it be assimilated whatever has been conveyed to you. Never, I repeat, never get mad. Hold your temper. Go easy on an argument and criticism. Ask question and stop talking. This is what we are looking at it as in what can be done and what should be done. So, feedback, the process of telling others how you feel about something you did or said about a situation in general as we go around it. Constructive feedback guidelines, give it directly, make it specific, give it when the receiver is willing, able to accept it. Make sure it is valid and give it in small doses. Definitely, yes, give it in absolutely small doses. So use communication channel. Channel richness is the capacity of communication channel to carry information in an effective manner. Remember, low channel richness is impersonal. It is always one way. It is always quick. But then we are looking for high channel richness, which is definitely personalized, which is definitely two-way and maybe slow. So managers need to choose a channel with appropriate richness for communication. And I have given you examples as in the messaging methodology that needs to be taken care for, or the way you talk or communicate. So use the communication, or should I say use an appropriate channel when you are supposed to message. If it is from a superior person or superordinate person in an organization to a subordinate, probably is understood or probably it is still accepted. But when a subordinate messages the superordinate or the boss or the supervisor, might not be the prudent way to go around it. Remember, the low richness is always impersonal to high richness, which is always personal. Low richness is always one way, might be quick, but high richness is always two-way and slow. So we let to understand the continuum between these two things. Remember, in low richness is all about posting, all about e-bulletin reports, memos, and letter. But as we go in the middle, it comes around your intranet, voicemail, and email. It's bit in between, a balance between the neutral zone as far as richness is concerned. But then as we go towards telephone or video conferencing, it is all about getting into high richness. Best and foremost thing, you just cannot eliminate the fact of face-to-face meeting or conversation in person. This is the highest modalities that needs to be taken care for. So how do we improve the communication? Number one is MBWA, is management by wandering around. It is the mere fact that you're moving in your office, in your organization, and seeing the things with your own eyes. And is not depending upon somebody's eyes to fill in you with the gaps. You do it on your own. Management by wandering around. open office hours, regular group meetings with the employees, regular mediated, computer mediated meeting in case people are in a diverse location, employee advisory councils, communication consultant, and 360-degree feedback that comes around it. Yes, we are talking every now and then about how communication can be improved. Proxemics and space design. Proxemics is the use of interpersonal space that we are looking into it. Interpersonal space is an important non-verbal cue that we go around it. Workspace layout is often overlooked as a form of non-verbal communication, but is being increasingly recognized for its impact on communications and behavior. This is what we are looking out here every now and then. Technology utilization. Information technology facilitates communication. The electronic grapevine actually speeds message and information from one person to another person, from one community to another community. Functional if information is accurate and useful, but it is again the other way around. It is dysfunctional if the information is false, distorted, and based on rumor. You look at social media, so many internet hoaxes are being circulated, and the weirdest of the hoaxes get circulated very fast, and it is, as we call it, the grapevine. The email privacy or privacy, the way you want to pronounce it, employers policy on personal email. Most of the organization would not encourage employees to look or respond to the personal email. Probably they would want from the communications only from the company's email per se. Do not assume that email privacy exists at work. So, how can communication be improved? Valuing cultures and diversity. Ethnocentrism is a tendency to consider one culture superior to any and all others. Ethnocentrism can cause people not to listen to others, address or speak others in a way to alienate them, in a way to put a wedge in their thought process. You should not demean them, should not rob dignity from any person. Use inappropriate stereotypes in dealing with someone from another culture is what we are looking at it. This is what we are talking every now and then. Perception, the process through which people receive, the process through which people interpret information from the environment. People can perceive the same things or situation differently. People behave on the basis of their perception. That is what we are looking out here every now and then. That is what is in the requirement of the day. Perception and communication, yes, we need to understand these things. And we started the very particular presentation with senders and receivers, wherein the senders encodes and the receivers decodes. That they are also choosing the channel in the through which the message is being transferred both ways. Now this is the perceptual distortion, as in the halo effect, as in the stereotypes, as in the selective perception and projection. Believe me, I have already stated the status impact of both the senders and receivers in an organization setup. There might be other noises that comes around it, and this is what we are talking as far as stereotypings are concerned. People who are always positive might always find positive implications even in a negative message. People who are negative orientations would always find drawbacks even in a positive communication. So these are the halo effect that comes around it. The selective perception, as in whatever has been of utility, you take it, and the rest you negate in the message, and the projections thereby. So how does perception influences communication? Remember, perception and attribution. Attribution is the process of developing, or should I say explanation of the events. That is why and cause, the root cause effect is all concerned around it. Fundamental attribution errors occurs when observer blames another performances failure or problem or internal rather than external factor. Self-serving biasness occurs when individuals blame their impersonal performances, failures, or problems, and external factors attribute their success to the internal factor thereby. This is what we are looking at it all the time, is all about self-serving. Again, this is the perception and attribution theory that needs to be taken care of. There might be biasness, there might be interpretation errors, there might be attribution which might be wrongly placed together, or even for that matter rightly placed. So we talk about the tendencies as far as stereotypes and halo effect are concerned. Halo effect are the orientation of the person which he or she espoused altogether, a positive orientation or negative orientation, in similarly they would try to interpret every message according to their requirement. Stereotype, I ask the people who are always been categorized into one particular group. Either they have been oversimplified within attributes, as in what this group is going to be behaving in a particular fashion, and so on and so forth. Perception tendencies infers of selective perceptions. Now, this is the tendency where you require particular attention to the situation or to the messages which affects you, and accordingly attributes those things to be reinforced towards one's belief, towards one's value, towards one's requirement. So you are basically taking the message, the content, the pointers that is in benefit of you and nothing else. Projection, the assignment of personal attributes to other individual is what we talk around it. How can we deal with conflict altogether? Conflict is a disagreement between people on the substantive issues regarding goals and tasks, allocation of resources, distribution of rewards, policies and procedures, and job assignments that comes around it. Emotional issues arise from the feeling of anger, distrust, dislike, fear, resentment, as well as personality clashes. Conflict that is well managed can help promote creativity and help performances thereby. That is what we tell in terms of conflict. How do we deal with it? How positively can we do with difficult people? Remember, all conflict need not be dysfunctional. There might be conflict which might actually benefit the persons involved and the organization in the longer run. Remember, functional conflicts are moderately intense, and it is always constructive and stimulate people to work towards a greater effort and cooperation. Whereas dysfunctionals are low intensity and very high intensity conflict. It might be just the orientation. It is always destructive in nature and hurts the morale of the people. So here we give you a relationship between conflict and performances. Remember, the intensity has been blocked, has been mapped on an x-axis, whereas the impact has been mapped on a y-axis. So impact improves and intensity lessens. So how do we go around it? It's all dysfunctional when the intensity is conflict is maybe low or high. Remember, maybe low or high, but too little or too much, and the impact is on a negative side. It might be why did I say intensity of conflict is on a low and a high? So we can have small conflict every day and have a negative situation, God knows for what thing, or we can have a huge blockage as far as certain principle or enactment in the organization, and that is what is a high conflict, which is again pulling down your performances. But what happens when the intensity are moderate, which is functional in the sense that it stimulates people to work together, it stimulates people to outdo each other. In the process, the organization achieves its goal. So this is the positive fashion of dealing with conflict. So find the root cause of it. Number one is the role ambiguities. Ambiguities in the sense who has been responsible for a particular work. The work might be divided or been assimilated between two, three, four department, person, groups, and so on and so forth. Resource scarcity, yes, this is one of the major attributes of conflict in the organization, where there is a dearth of resources. Task interdependency of one finishing the work only when the other person can start. So depending, if we have certain things, the other person decide not to finish the work in the very first place, and in a process it is hampering the productivity. Competing objectives, Definitely, yes. Structural differentiation and unresolved prior conflict, the issues that have been raised in the past days, past weeks, or past months that we talk about it. This is the reason why we need to understand the causes of conflict and deal with it positively. So, the way to resolve the conflict is to appeal to the superordinate goal, the overall goal, the overarching goal that everyone is working towards an organization, making more resources available, changing the people, altering the physical environment then and there. This is what we are looking per se. We come to the fag end of the presentations, and to finally wind up how to deal with people in the workplaces is to have an integration procedures for resolving any sense of discontentment, conflict, arguments, or grievances. First and foremost thing is to use liaison personal special task force people at the higher echelon, people who are viewed as neutral, people where there's a cross-functional teams or a matrix organization, changing reward system, changing policies and procedures, and training in interpersonal skills that becomes around it. This is the best methodology to deal with every kind of people in an organization. The incentive procedures, the policies, and the training skills, if you can upgrade around it, bring in a neutral persons and mediators, and I'm sure the organizations would be a wonderful place to work for. Every person, every individual will be enjoying the share of the work, and the organization will, the flag of the organization will flutter high in the air. Thank you for watching this video.